I have the latest installment of Ezekiel Kralen's story about the two dogs, Flaco and Lucky, and his frenemy, Deke, who lives out in the street, while Ezekiel lives upstairs in an apartment that he's not allowed to let the dogs into, and so it's a fraught situation. This is titled The Dragon Book. Ezekiel Kralen wrote. Email correspondence January 23rd and 24th. Subject, birthday drama bullshit. Date, January 23rd, evening. Woke me up out of a deep sleep yesterday around 8 a.m. Annoying, but I let it slide because I can't have the pups stay with me, and I know how difficult it must be to watch over them 24/7 when you live on the streets, especially with one so emotionally stunted. Okay, off to a good start, I suppose. He didn't seem upset when he called up to me, and it was a quiet morning. But just when I got to the gate, a street cleaner started up his pressure hose right out front, spraying the sidewalk with a chill cloud of mist, enveloping me with a horrid cacophony of noise. If it ain't Deke's screams, it's someone else blowing off my eardrums. They were at the bus stop, and as I approached, Deke exploded in a fury and dashed his drink across the sidewalk where it smashed against Super Duper's window, hollering how he's ready to give up the dogs. He can't take it anymore. Someone offered him $100 for them, and Flaco wouldn't let him fuck his girlfriend because she kept barking until they allowed her to scramble between them, etc., etc. Fortunately, the gasoline motor of that pressure hose drowned out his voice to the point where it couldn't float up to my neighbor's windows. I had brought with me a bowl of water for the dogs, and just when I moved to set it down, he whacked it out of my hands. What a way to start the morning, eh, Watson? The grating noise of the pressure hose went on for almost 10 more minutes while Deke played his stupid, angry drama, and I crouched down to pet the doggies. Of course, I didn't buy any of his bullcrap, and as soon as he took a pause, I stood up, stretched out my arms, and sang in my tone-deaf, flat voice, "Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you," which really ticked him off. Nonetheless, in spite of his attempts to screech even louder, I completed that popular tune, "Happy birthday, dear Deke, happy birthday to you." The street cleaner finally shut down his equipment and drove away, and all was reasonably quiet once more, including Deke, who had toned things down to a grumble. "Let me bring down another bowl of water," I said. "How about I fix them breakfast?" But he would have none of it, so he just packed everything back into the cart and took off with the mutts. I returned to hovel, glad for some peace and quiet at last. 20 minutes later he returned, called up to me, and asked for a bowl of water and a meal for the hounds. "Sure," I said, relieved to see he had calmed down. "How much do I have left for the month?" he queried as I laid down the bowls, and the doggies eagerly partook. $100, I replied. "Can I have this Thursday's in advance?" "Well, I suppose, but I'll have to go to the bank," I answered. "How about the whole $100?" he blurted. "It's my birthday, and I promise I won't bother you again for the rest of the month." "Sure." I shrugged my shoulders. "Just so you know, you won't get paid again for 12 long days from now." He was fine with that. "Yeah, right, we'll see." So off I went to collect his final buckazoids for January. By the time I returned, he was ready to depart again. I gave the pooches a few more sweet hugs, and off they went. Deke returned in the evening to pick up his devices, including just one of his pair of Flintstone speakers, because he broke the other one when it dropped from his shopping cart sometime last night, but it was still in his cart that morning, all smashed up. That's how I know. Again, he started insulting me with a variety of accusations that you have already heard about many times over. I simply ignored him and fixed the pups another meal, laid some sheets of cardboard down for them and a spare sleeping blanket that's part of my bedding, because Deke is too heartless to set up a comfy nest for the dogs himself with his own comforter. But since he gave up his expletives, I finally dished it back. "Oh, little baby Deke is upset. Does baby Deke need his diapers changed? Poor little baby Deke. He's always crying and screaming because he dropped his lollipop." I also admonished him, "I don't want to hear you talk in anger about the dogs ever again. That's disgusting. They are a blessing." I wouldn't let up, so he finally packed his stuff and departed, upon which I collected my sleeping bag and placed the cardboard by the nearby trash bin before returning upstairs. I think he just went up the block, thus denying Flaco and Lucky their cozy nest. But 2 hours later he returned, called to me and said to bring his gizmos down. They'll be at the bus stop, and he's already laid down some cardboard and a blanket for the hounds. Glad to see he was contrite once more, I did as he requested, hugged and kissed the quadrupeds for a few minutes, and then returned back upstairs. They left about an hour later. He didn't show up again until this evening, and seemed to be in a good mood. Didn't mind at all when I brought down some cardboard and a sleeping bag for the dogs. But about an hour later, when he had a couple of other vagrants for company, including his friend, also named Deke, whom I haven't seen for over a year, he started to insult me when I stepped back outside to pick up the empty food bowls. The dogs had moved about and were no longer covered, so I went back upstairs to get a second child-sized sleeping bag to lay over them, and that's when their master got vicious. So again I played the baby game on him, told him it'll be a miracle the day he finally grows up. He kept yanking part of the second bag off them, even though both dogs were comfortably curled up and glad for the extra warmth. I kept placing the bag back over them. He kept pulling it off, but gave up and finally let them remain covered, because he knew I wouldn't give in. Then, just before I rose to return hovel, he stood up and said, "I got a book to show you. I'll prove I'm right." Then rummaged through his shopping cart until he found it. It was a lovely coffee table book about dragons, with many colorful illustrations. "See," he said, while pointing at the cover depicting a ferocious dragon spewing flames. His point in all this was that book justified his accusation that I'm evil because I'm a dragon myself. This goes way back to older conversations last year, if you'll recall. "It doesn't prove a thing, Deke," I clarified. "There are good dragons as well as bad dragons, good angels and good people and bad people. That's just one book. There are thousands of books about dragons. You're just too stupid and uneducated to know better." The other Deke was grinning, holding back a guffaw. By then there was yet another vagrant parked along the ATM plywood, so that makes 3 visitors. The third fellow was blond, skinny, attractive, well-dressed, and of a pleasant demeanor. Some time later I looked outside again to see the pups still covered, though Flacco was halfway emerged, thus exposed to the cold breezes. I could see Deke nodding forward in his sleepy meth stupor, so I knew it was safe for me to step back outside and arrange the comforter to cover Flacco back up. As I exited the front gate, Deke number 2 looked up at me and smiled as I raised a finger to my lips to tell him to stay quiet. I crouched down and pet Flacco a few times, then folded a corner of the bag over her exposed half, and she hunkered back down again in happy repose. Now I'm back upstairs, good doctor, composing this very sentence. I think I'll stop here for now. If I have anything further to report about tonight's meetup, you'll be the first to know. Subject: birthday drama bullshit addendum, date January 23rd, nighttime. Deke left about an hour ago, so when I returned his electronics, I asked if I could borrow that dragon book. "No, you can have it," he replied. "So here's the front cover. Click here for a larger view." Well, I can't do that now, so okay. Turns out to be a game book for Dungeons and Dragons, and here's a lovely illustration somewhere in the middle. Before he woke up and got ready to leave, I noticed only one homeless visitor remained, and he was tidying up Deke's cart and stuff around it. Here's a quick video, 10 seconds. I went back outside to cover up Flacco again and then spoke with the fellow. "I see you're straightening out Deke's cart. Well done." "Yeah, thanks," he replied. "Do you really think I did a good job?" "I'd say so. Since Deke's so sloppy, it takes a lot of focus to tidy up his cart." And finally, here's a picture of Deke with some lady 2 afternoons ago. I forgot to include that entire little episode in my tales, but not really much to say about it, except that he gave me a hard time when I stepped back outside to provide some cardboard and a sleeping bag for the pups. She's on the right, in a brown coat. Deke and Flacco are in the center, and Lucky's on the left, atop the sleeping bag. Subject: the dragon book was a gift. Date January 24th. Of course, he knows how much I love dragons. Didn't I just talk about how shamans or bodhisattva guardians, same thing, are most obscure and sneaky when they bless you with a gift? Previous to this book, that would be the lovely sweater jacket, which he tossed to the ground like trash, but this time around he staged a hissy fit while waving the dragon book in my face. The hilarious thing about it is that it didn't hit me that it was another offertory till some time after I asked to borrow it. When I was flipping through the book after taking those 2 photos, it struck me like running blind into a brick wall. Duh! It's another gift, of course. Keep in mind here, Watson, that shamans are almost always tricksters to boot. Thus his unseemly behavior was most appropriate. Yesterday evening I overheard a tenant speaking with his guest as they climbed up the stairs. I just stepped outside my room to bring Deke his gadgets. Our building manager is a really old man. He's in the hospital now and may never come back, end quote. Sidebar, they were laughing boisterously at that. Nothing mournful about it, and who can blame them? But when I told Deke what I just heard from another resident, he insisted it isn't Kevin. He definitely saw him exit the building just minutes before the EMTs arrived. And that wasn't him being carried out in the ambulance, he added. Now, we both know, good physician, Deke is hardly the most reliable source of information on anything, even as an eyewitness. Who can tell whether what he saw was real or a meth-induced phantasmagoria? But I did not press him on that touchy subject. I simply declared with a chuckle, maybe you saw his ghost. As for what yours truly thinks about all this, I'm sure it was our building manager shunted off to San Francisco General, no matter my Cajun monkey's claim otherwise. After all, he is a trickster who may indeed know it was Kevin. So what's really going on? Here's my conjecture. Yet another silly plot cooked up by my bodhisattva overseers, perhaps with even Kevin himself playing his role by feigning a dying man, all for my entertainment. If so, he's probably having a good laugh right now, along with Deke, Arwin, and any other members of the pro-Zeke cabal that get together on a frequent basis to hatch their next scheme at this sitting duck pilgrim's expense. And you know what, Watson? I'm laughing, too, at the very idea, because it's wonderful if true, besides which I love ducks. By the way, Scooter was hanging around outside last night for a time while Deke and the pups were there, leaning his butt against the hoop-shaped bicycle rack and smoking a ciggy right in front of the gate. So that put a damper on my stepping outside until, thank God, he finally disappeared after 20 minutes or so. I hate these fucking nosy twerps who impose themselves in the middle of my own world, unwelcome and unbidden, like they dropped from some hellish wormhole in the sky and landed right before me. Scooter's just the most recent. Now, let's go back to January of last year, when a tenant named Atom, A-T-O-M, posted to my door a notice of a complaint against the building manager, and that we, the residents, should form a tenants' union. You remember that, I'm sure, but just in case you need a refresher, here's a link to that document. As you also know, Atom's worthy proposal never went anywhere, but it wasn't till quite recently that I realized this person is the one I've been calling Chihuahua Man in my tales, who introduced himself to me some late month in 2021 as Adam. At least that's what I heard, and no one can blame me for the mistake, as he never said Atom as in A-T-O-M, which I think he should do for anyone he meets. For your information, the only reason it dawned on me that his name is Atom, not Adam, was because whenever I checked the delivery packages in the lobby, I kept coming across ones addressed to Atom, many of which were from the online pet store Chewy, and he does own 2 delightful chihuahuas, which repetition of seeing doggy packages delivered to one Atom eventually led me to this astounding breakthrough. The Atom is Atom. He's the one who tried to start a tenants' union thanks to lousy management. I suppose Kevin's likely demise is a victory of sorts, and that Atom may be pleased as punch about that, as I am likewise. And remember also, he is the person who blew up in my face once for Flacco and Lucky's wild barking at him in the hallway, but who, some days later, apologized for that and has been very nice to me ever since. Not that he shows any interest in getting to know me beyond a neighborly rapport, so it's unlikely we'll ever discuss Kevin's welcome disappearance and share a few chuckles over that. However, I have this amusing theory about him. In light of the tenants' union proposal falling flat on its face, perhaps Atom came up with a new strategy, befriending the building manager and inviting him over for a tall glass of beer or liquor or wine or bubbly or a cup of tea or Java once or twice a week, slowly poisoning him a la arsenic and old lace. And with that delightful reverie of dark speculation, I leave you for the nonce, dear comrade Morticia, and wish you a most loverly day.